All right, guys, well, it's finally come to time where I could finally show you guys what's inside this box. Judging by the title I'm probably going to be putting in this video, I'm sure you guys already know that it's a plow. This is a plow from Artillian, but you guys don't know which plow it is and what size it is yet. So let's just dive right into this thing. We'll unbox it. As you can see, I've got a smaller box here on top as well. Not even sure really what's in that. So we'll open this up together and we'll see what's inside. All right, so we'll get this little box here out of the way. Finally bust this thing open here. It's a very heavy box. Tell you that. It's been sitting in my garage now for a couple months, so I'm excited to actually get this thing open so I can get it outside. Oh, we've got the lid open here. We can kind of take a peek inside. Just kind of want to show you guys the way Artillian boxes everything. You can see here they've got this really thick fabric on all of their stuff that they ship. They pack it nice and tightly with all these little dividers. They make darn sure that nothing gets scratched or damaged on the way to your house, which is really nice because, you know, this stuff costs a lot of money. They are a premium company, and as you'll see when I get this thing unboxed here, it is a premium product. So first thing we got here, a smaller box. Assuming this is going to be some bracketry and whatnot. Next thing here looks like it's going to be a plow bracket. Look how nice that power cord is. Get that set to the side. We've also got some more bracketry here for the plow. I think that's all we've got for this side. I really love using this fabric for winterizing my cab. Any of them little spaces or gaps inside the cab, this is the stuff that I use. It's a nice thick material, good for blocking cold air from getting in the cab, that's for sure. Next up, it looks like we've got the mounting bracket. So this mounting bracket right here, this will go to the Artillian fork frame, and the rest of the plow bracket mounts to this. And last up here, I'm assuming is just going to be the plow. Set it on the ground for now. Okay, so now we've got everything unboxed here. I'm going to go ahead and get this box out of the way. I'll get everything set up here, and I'll give you guys a close-up look at everything that came in this box. All right, guys, well, I've got everything out of the way here. I've got the plow and the framing set up the way I believe it goes, but I'm not quite sure about it because I've never put one of these together. So we've got the main plow here. We've got the long piece of frame here, the triangular piece of frame, which I believe this piece will mount to this piece, and then obviously the plow. And then lastly, we got the coupler that goes on the pallet fork frame itself. We've got a couple more boxes here to unbox, so let me get the camera set up. We'll start unboxing these and see what's in them, and then we'll get putting this thing together. All right, so starting with this big box here. We've got an instruction manual of how to put together the plow. Looks like we've got a couple hydraulic hoses here. This will be for the hydraulic rams to angle the plow. We've also got a couple of springs. This would be for the trip edge of the plow, so that if you hit something sharp, it'll trip. We've got a couple more hydraulic hoses here, and we've got a bag of hydraulic elbows, chain with some hardware. This right here looks like it's going to be a hydraulic manifold, so this is going to be where all the lines get plumbed in together. And then it looks like it comes with a little bracket here. Then lastly here, we've got some kind of a plate here. So this will probably go to the mounting frame as well. So that'll take care of that box. We can go ahead and move to these two here. I'm going to assume that these are probably the hydraulic cylinders. Yep, so that is a hydraulic ram. One for one side, and I'm guessing we've got one here for the other. Okay, now we've got two more boxes left here. Go ahead and bust this bigger one open. Okay, so inside of this one, looks like we've got a couple of rubber deflectors. These look like they would go on the ends of the plow, so one on either end. And this allows the plow to scoop or be able to have like a larger swath. These are really nice because if you want to get real tight to the vehicle and you end up hitting it, this rubber is just going to deflect and it's not going to hurt the object that you're plowing up against. So these are really nice to have for getting up close and tight to certain objects. The only other thing left in here is just the mounting hardware for the rubber sides. Okay, and we've got one more thing left here. Let's get this thing cracked open. I have no idea what it is. All right, and in this one, we've got a couple of plow markers. So this is really nice. You get one for each corner of the plow. So you've got one on either end, and that way, up inside your cab of your tractor, you could easily see each corner of your plow. That's really nice that they sent these as well. All right, so now we've got all this stuff opened up. Let's go ahead and start putting together the plow. All right, guys, so now we're at the point where we're going to start putting this plow together. So I'm going to kind of do like a step-by-step of how to put this entire plow together, as there is quite a bit of pieces to it. As you can see here, I've got everything laid out. We've got our rubber sides. We've got a top plate here. It's like a cover plate. We've got all kinds of hardware here. We've got our hydraulic fittings, the hydraulic block, hydraulic mounting bracket. We've got a couple of springs, a couple of hydraulic cylinders, and our hydraulic hoses. So it looks like there's a lot here, but it's really not a very tough thing to put together. And like I said, I'm going to walk you guys right through it as we go along here. But what we've got here is we've got a 60-inch plow. Artillian has a 60-inch and a 72-inch version. 72-inch version for compact tractors and larger, and the 60-inch for mainly subcompact tractors and compact tractors. So I got the 60-inch version here. This plow fully together only weighs about 209 pounds, which is nothing. Very light plow to have on the front end loader. 200 pounds is pretty good. It also gives it enough weight still to be effective, because you want to have a little bit of weight on the plow itself to be able to scrape up that ice and push through the snow. So it's a really good balanced weight, I feel. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna put this thing together, and once I get all done, I'll go through a little bit more with you guys of the plow, how it works, how it functions. We'll get it hooked up to the tractor, and I'll show you guys kind of like the end result. So first thing we need to do here, I looked through the manual, and the first thing we need to do is install the trip frame to the mold board or the plow. There's one hole on each side of the trip frame, and we have a hole here on each side of this little lip right here on the plow. So what we need to do is get our 2.5-inch bolts that came with the kit. They're 2.5 inch by 1/2 inch, and we need to throw them through the sides here. Okay, so just to make this a little bit easier to install, I'm gonna go ahead and tip the plow on its face. And now they recommend before installing the trip frame to the plow itself to throw a little bit of grease where it's gonna be attaching to. So I've got some Molly grease here. I'm gonna put a little bit right on the mounting hole, which is on the bottom of the plow right here. So you just wanna spread it around on the inside face of this, and this will allow it to be free every time it needs a trip. It's gonna have plenty of grease there so it doesn't get seized up on you. Because if your trip edge gets seized, you'll have a bad day. Ask me how I know. Okay, so now I've got my 2.5-inch long bolts. Go ahead and grab this frame. We're just gonna set it right on top of the plow here. Then we're gonna go ahead and grab one of our 1/2-inch bolts. We're gonna slide it inward through the plow itself into the trip edge bracket. Then what we're gonna do is get our 1/2-inch nylon lock nuts. We're gonna go ahead and throw one of these on each side. There's gonna be no washers involved here. And what you wanna do is just tighten this thing up so it's snug. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these up. I've got a 19mm wrench and a 19mm socket here on my impact gun. Okay, so what I did there was I tightened it up all the way, and then I just backed it off a touch. Okay, that's perfect. You can see there how I can put it pretty much in any position, but I can still move it freely. That's about where you want this. Okay, so now we've got the trip edge bracket all mounted in place. You can go ahead and work it a little bit back and forth, just kind of get that grease spread out that you put on the sides of it. Once you're happy with that, you can go ahead and flip the plow back over. Now what you want to do is go ahead and grab your trip edge springs. You're going to want to hook it in this eyelet right here on the trip edge frame. Then you're going to grab one of your 3/8-inch eye bolts. You're going to hook it on the other end of the spring like so. Now what you're going to do is pick up on the bracket itself and put the eye bolt through the top of the plow here. And then to finish mounting the eye bolt, you're gonna use your 3/8 washer and your 3/8 nylon lock nut. All right, now I'll give you guys a good look at how that mounts so you can see the bottom of the spring. Hooks into the top of this trip bracket here, comes up, goes through the edge of the plow, right up at the top here, and then that's where you install your 3/8 nylon lock nut along with your washer there. So now I'm gonna go ahead and throw the other side on here and just repeat the same process. Okay, now you're probably wondering how are we gonna adjust the spring. They tell you in the manual that you wanna go ahead and tighten this nut up until you can get a piece of paper in between the springs here. So what you're gonna need to tighten this up is a 14mm ratchet wrench or socket. Go ahead and throw that on a nut here. We're just gonna keep tightening this up until I can get this piece of paper in between the springs here. Okay, so right there. So I'd say that's perfect right there. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do this to the other side. You wanna make sure that you get these as evenly tensioned as possible. That way when your trip edge trips, it trips evenly. It doesn't cause any wear to either one of the hinge points. There you go, as you can see, I get that paper all the way in there now. But yet there's still contact between the paper and the spring. So I'm happy with that. I'm just gonna make sure now that both the heads of these bolts match. So I might make a minor adjustment here on either one of these nuts. And once that's done, we can go ahead and move on to the next step. All right guys, now it's time to install the A-frame to the trip edge frame. So what this does is it slides up underneath, just like so. And it gets mounted by a single 1/2 inch by 3.5 inch bolt. So that goes through the middle right there, and that allows this thing to pivot. So what you're gonna wanna do is slide this A-frame in there so you can see where it's gonna be making contact with the trip edge frame. That way you can layer this with grease. So I'm gonna put a bunch of grease on the tip here. I'm also gonna grease the top of this surface here so that when it slides back and forth, it will never bind. And then once you've got it all greased up, we can go ahead and slide it in place. So I'm gonna grab my grease gun here and just throw some globs of grease in this frame here. Make sure you get some inside the bolt hole itself in the top here. You pretty much want to just come right up to the edge of these 4 mounting holes right here. Okay, so now we've got the A-frame greased up. We can go ahead and slide it into place. And Goes up underneath the trip edge frame, just like so. You want to make sure you line up your holes here. Now you want to grab your 3.5 inch by 1/2 inch bolt. You want to throw some grease on that as well. Go ahead and grease that up good. Make sure your washer's on there. And drop it on down through the hole in the A-frame. Now once you've got that bolt slid through the A-frame, you're going to take your 1/2 inch oval nut. It's a locking nut. Go ahead and throw that on the bottom side. Then you're going to want to tighten that up just until it's snug. So I would say tighten it up until this is almost too tight to turn, and then loosen it up maybe 1/4 of a turn. Just so that this A-frame is free to move from side to side. Again, you're going to need a 19mm socket and a wrench for this as well. Okay, so that right there is perfect. Okay, so our next step is going to be mounting this cover plate. So on the back side of this cover plate, you also need to apply grease where it's going to be sliding up against the frame here. So I'm going to apply some grease just before these bolt holes here and all the way out to the end. Now we go ahead and spin this cover plate over, and we're going to line it up with these 4 holes right here. Now what you're going to want to do is use 4 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch grade 8 bolts. You're going to want to put a lock washer on the end, just like that, and then you're going to want to thread it down into the A-frame. And we can go ahead and grab a 19mm socket on a ratchet and go ahead and tighten these things up. Alright guys, so this is what the plow is shaping up to be so far. It's starting to actually look like a plow we could use now. As you can see here, how this A-frame bracket pivots back and forth. And you can kind of see how the grease is spreading out as I slide this from side to side. So that's working really good. So now that we've got all that done, our next step is going to be doing the hydraulic side of the plow. So first thing it wants us to do is grab this hydraulic block and thread in our high pressure hoses. Each one of these hoses is going to be coming from each one of the cylinders here. So we're going to install the hoses first, then we're going to be installing the elbows. They want you to install this bracket after the fact, but I think I'm going to install it first just so I have a little bit more to hold on to when I'm reefing on these lines, trying to get these lines tightened up in here. You are going to need some kind of a thread sealer. I use a hydraulic thread sealer. Just make sure whatever you use doesn't have any nylon in it, because nylon, if it gets in your hydraulic system, it can cause a lot of harm. What I use is a stuff by Permatex. It's called thread sealer. Part number there is 56521. This is a really good stuff. I've been using this for a long time now on all sorts of hydraulic fittings, and I've yet to have a single leak, and I've yet to have any of them come loose on me either. So I'm going to be using this to install it. As you can see here, they give us a little diagram of which line needs to go where. This is very crucial that you get them in the right spots. Otherwise, your hydraulic cylinders are not going to function correctly. Okay, so like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is install this bracket just to get that out of the way, and so I have a little bit more to hold on to as I'm tightening these lines. So go ahead and line up your holes on your bracket. There's 2 plugs on this hydraulic block. There's one here and one here. You want to make sure the one on the left side is facing away from you and the one on the right side is facing towards you when you assemble this. So I'm going to go ahead and take 2 of the black bolts that come with the kit. I'm going to drop them down through. And then from the other side of the bracket here, you're going to go ahead and thread on the black nylon locking nut. Now go ahead and tighten these up. These are a 10mm. So I've got a 10mm ratchet and wrench here. Okay, now we've got that tight. Now we go ahead and start installing the high pressure lines. Okay, so as demonstrated on the paperwork here, you're going to need 1 high pressure line for each side here. So we'll go ahead and remove one of these plugs. Go ahead and take that out. And grab one of our high pressure lines. Both ends are the same, so it doesn't matter which end you grab or which line you grab. Go ahead and pull off one of the caps here. I'm going to grab my hydraulic thread paste, and I'm going to apply just a little bit to the ends of the threads here. And then I'll just rub it around. And we go ahead and stick that first line in the right side fitting here. Go ahead and grab yourself a 9/16 or 14mm and tighten this hose up until it's nice and tight. Okay, that's nice and tight. Now we can go ahead and move on to the other line. So now as you can see, when you hold the bracket off to your right side, you can see we've got this thing configured just like the manual here. So now what we're going to be doing is installing 2 of the hydraulic swivel elbows, which are 2 of these guys right here. So you've got a swivel end on one end, and then the other end is just a regular pipe thread. So these are going to be going into each end here, and we're going to be angling these so that they're sticking straight upward, so away from the bracket. So you can see how both of them are pointing directly up from the bracket. So that is exactly how they have it pictured. So as long as yours looks like this, you should be all set. Now we can go ahead and set this to the side and move on to the next step. All right, guys, so now we're at the point where we're gonna be mounting the hydraulic cylinders to the plow itself. But before we do that, we need to install the hydraulic fittings. So we've got 2 fittings left here. They're elbows with a JIC collar on them. So they're the same exact type of elbows we installed into that block. So we're gonna take one at a time here. We're gonna thread them into the hydraulic cylinder. So we gotta remove this plug and then we'll thread them in. So to remove this plug, you're gonna need an Allen socket or a T40 Torx. It's really not a Torx plug, but you could use a Torx socket for it. Throw on some of the sealer. Then we go ahead and thread the elbow into the cylinder. And you wanna make sure when you're done tightening it that the elbow is facing towards the end of the cylinder. Not this end, but the long end. So now we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the other one. Okay, so here's what the hydraulic side of the plow should look like. Everything should look like this when you're all done. You can see the hydraulic block with the 2 high pressure hoses on either end. You can see your hydraulic cylinders here with the elbows pointing towards the long end of the cylinders. Each one of these high pressure lines are going to be going to each one of these ports here on the cylinders. Basically, this block acts as like its own distribution block or splitter, so that you're allowed to run both of these cylinders off of 1/3 function valve, so that you don't need a splitter itself off of the valve. So I think that's a pretty neat design, how they both go into this block, so you don't have to have anything extra to run both these cylinders. So let's go ahead and get these thrown on the plow now, and I'll show you guys how to do that. All right, guys, so the only hardware left you should have as far as bolts is you'll have 2 long bolts and 2 short bolts. These are all 1/2 inch. And then you're gonna have 4 1/2 inch nylon lock nuts as well. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna place each one of these cylinders on the inside of this A-frame. You wanna make sure that the hydraulic fitting is facing towards the back. So these cylinders will go in and sit just like that. Slide this one under as well. And then you're gonna use these long 1/2 inch bolts along with your hydraulic block, and that's gonna get mounted right up on top here. Okay, so what you wanna do is start with the long bolt on the left side of the bracket here. Go ahead and throw that through. Then you're gonna be putting the bolt through the A-frame. Once you get the bolt through the A-frame, you're gonna go ahead and stick in your hydraulic cylinder. Just like that there. Then we can go ahead and grab the other one and repeat the same exact process here. Like that. Okay, so now we've got our longer grade 8 bolts through the bracket, the A-frame, and the hydraulic cylinders. We can go ahead and throw in our 1/2 inch locking nuts. All right, guys, so I've lifted a plow up just so you guys can see a little better view of how the bolts come through the bracket, the A-frame, and then the cylinders here, and they get nutted here on the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten them up now. Now let me flip this plow back over and we'll connect the other ends of these rams. All right, guys, so now the only thing left in the kit is just your 2 shorter bolts with your 2 lock nuts. So now we can go ahead and connect these rams to the end of the plow here. So how I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna actually rotate the plow frame closer to the one side of the ram. So if I pull it over like this, I'll be able to get the one side in. And since these don't have any fluid in them yet, you can push and pull these rods a little bit, but they are pretty stiff. So for the first one, I'm just gonna get it lined up here and just angle the plow towards it. So I got this lined up now. You wanna go ahead and drop the bolt down through so that you can nut it on the bottom here. And now that I got that bolt in there, I'm gonna try to pull and separate this ram using the plow as leverage. Okay, so now with that other side fully extended, these 2 sides here should now meet up. So we'll go ahead and slide this in place, and we'll drop in our bolt and throw in our nut. Okay, now we can go ahead and tighten these up, and we should be all set to start running the other ends of these high pressure lines. All right, guys, so I've got the plow tipped on its face again. Like I said, we just got to connect these hydraulic pressure hoses here, these high pressure lines, to these elbows here on the ram. So let me just pop this cap off. Go ahead and throw some paste on these. Go ahead and thread it into the elbow. Okay guys, now we're going to be installing our last remaining hydraulic hoses. So these are the hoses that are going to be going out to your 3rd function. So what they want you to do is to connect the yellow end to this fitting up here, and one with the black coupler or the black boot is going to be going to this elbow here. So again, we're going to be using the thread paste here. Should be the last time we got to use it. We'll go ahead and put the shorter hose on this forward coupler, and then we're going to do the same thing with the longer hose here. We're going to be putting that one on the outside coupler here. Alrighty guys, so now what I'm doing is I'm putting this last remaining bracket on the A-frame here. So as you can see here, it's got two little ears coming off the sides where it pins right on. So we've got an ear there and an ear there. Now mine's a pretty snug fit. I don't know if that was just the one I got or what, but I just got to tap it in with a hammer. So let me just tap this in. It's really not too bad. Okay, so now that I've got it where the pins will line up, I will throw the pins through. I'll get one pin on each side here, and then we still got to throw in the chain that connects from the plow to the frame here, and that keeps the plow from dropping all the way down. That just kind of suspends it and holds it up. So let's get that done next. And then the last thing we got to do is connect all of this to the Artillian fork frame. We can throw it on the tractor and test this thing out. Okay, so Artillian sent us two large pins. These are for these hinges right here. So we'll go ahead and stick one in, and then we've got a big cotter pin that goes on the inside. Now we just got to install our chain for the center. All right, so for the one end of the chain that connects to the plow, we've got this clevis with a bolt through it. So we're gonna go ahead and put the chain around the clevis here. Then we can take the chain in the clevis and put it around this little mount right here. Slide our bolt through, put our nut on. Okay. Okay, then we're gonna take the other end of this chain, and we're gonna connect it right to this mount here using our last remaining pin and cotter clip. Put that through just like that. Stick your clip in, and you're all set there. Okay, so real quick before we put the plow on the Artillian fork frame and test it out, let's go ahead and put on our side markers. So you're gonna wanna go ahead and put the bolt in facing towards the tractor. Then you're gonna put a washer on there, and finally a lock washer. And same thing with the top side here. And we'll go ahead and tighten it up with a 1/2-inch socket. All right guys, well that's the finished product of the plow. That's what it looks like fully together. You can see these nice little markers on the side, give you great visibility of each corner of the plow. Really turned out nice, definitely a high quality piece for sure. So now let's go ahead and get this thing lifted up, thrown on the fork frame here, and I'll bring the tractor in, we'll pick this thing up, connect the hydraulic lines, and see exactly how this thing functions. For anybody wanting to know, you don't have to take off all 3 pins in the chain every time you want to take this on and off. Having it on the tractor, I still think it would be pretty easy. You could just pick the plow up on the left side of the frame, shuffle it over, and then shuffle it back to the center, where you'll then put your pins in, lock the entire thing in place, just like so, and then you're all set. So there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and bring the tractor in now. We'll go ahead and pick up on the Artillian fork frame, lift this plow up in the air, but I'm really liking the way this thing looks. So let me sit you guys down, I'll bring the tractor in and see what happens here. All right guys, so we got all the air bled out. It took me a couple seconds at first to get the fluid flowing. You gotta remember all those hoses were completely empty. Same with the cylinders here. Everything was shipped empty, also with the block there. So after doing this, you're probably gonna wanna check your hydraulic fluid reservoir because this is all gonna take up quite a bit of fluid, maybe a quart or two altogether, probably about a quart or so. So definitely check your hydraulic fluid when you get all done with this if you're buying the same plow for yourself. Aside from that, make sure you check it for hydraulic leaks when you're all done. Go around the block here and all these fittings, making sure you don't have any leaks. One thing they did say at the end of the manual is if your hydraulic cylinder is leaking, it could be because you got to reset the O-ring on the end. There is this nut, as you can see, a threaded nut on the end of the cylinders. So if you do have a leak, what they want you to do is crack this nut loose, go back about a quarter turn, and then retighten it again. Basically, you're just cracking them loose and snugging them back up, and that reseats the O-ring at the end here. Sometimes you got to do it a couple times, but I highly doubt that's going to be a common problem. As you can see, mine are bone dry. All of my lines and hoses are dry. coming all the way back up here to my third function valve. So overall, I'm really happy with this plow. It's very, very high quality. I'm stoked to use it this year because, as you guys know, I built myself a push box for last year, and I'd used it all last year, and it worked really well. But one of the problems with it was whenever we had a lot of snow, you know, say like 2 or 3 feet of snow, it took me a while to get that first pass opened up down my driveway because my driveway is pretty long. So when you're trying to push with a push box, you know, 3 feet of snow at a time, and you're trying to run that down to the end of the driveway, the snow would just keep piling up in front of it, and a lot of times it would stop the tractor, and I'd have to back up, and I would basically just have to ram at it, and I would have to keep ramming until I was able to break through all the way to the end. Once I had that first pass opened up, it wasn't too bad. I could just take a little bit out of each side as I did more passes until I had it all cleared. The other thing with the push box was I couldn't back drag really close to the building, so I could back drag with it, but being that the push box is a couple foot wide, I could only get within a couple feet of any of my doorways or my house or garage. So that was another issue with it. So when I got done plowing, I usually had to do some shoveling. And as you can see with a snow plow, you're able to back drag and get right up next to something before you pull backwards. So you're able to get every ounce of snow right up until the edge of a building or a door so that you don't have to do any shoveling when you're done. So that's another reason I wanted to plow. I'm really excited to try this year. You guys are definitely going to see a lot of plowing videos of this year as long as we get some snow, because as you guys can see out there, we have no snow. Typically by this time of year, we've got feet of snow outside. So one thing I didn't install yet was the rubber sides. This is called their wing extension kit for anyone who has this plow and doesn't have these. It's a great extension if you feel like you just want a little bit more plow, like a little bit more swath. You could add these and have a little bit more plowing surface. Also, like I said in the beginning, if you're getting up close to cars or vehicles or even your house and you're afraid of hitting it, those soft rubber edges are great because you can come right up next to it, and the rubber edge is obviously not going to affect anything you're plowing against. I will probably end up testing this plow out first just the way it is, just because I kind of want to get a feel for it just the way it is first, and then after I will probably end up adding these, and I'll show you guys how to do it. I'll run through the instructions with you. It's really not hard to do though. It comes with all the hardware right here, and they just mount to the sides. I'll show you guys real quick. So these will get bolted right onto the sides, just like so, and you can see how they're formed, fitted for each side. So there's a left and a right side, and you can see how they'll add, you know, a good probably 6 inches or so to your plow if you need more of a swath. And again, if you want to make sure you protect whatever you're plowing up against. So that's really nice, really cool add-on that Artillian offers. So pick one of them up if you want to. Part number's right there. Aside from that, Artillian also makes a rubber edge for the top, I believe, which utilizes these bolt holes up top. So that's what those are for. It's a rubber edge that sits maybe 4 to 6 inches tall, and it kind of hangs over the edge, and it allows the snow, when it comes up, to kind of roll off that edge, and it dumps back down in front of it, so you're not getting a bunch of snow back over top of the plow and having to do more passes than you normally would. So I'm probably gonna end up getting one of them for this plow, and I'll add it on there. So when I do that, maybe I'll add the rubber sides as well. But I'm hoping to use it just the way it is first, just to kind of test it out, and that way I can see the difference between the two. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was informative. I know there wasn't a video, I don't think, on the entire internet of how to assemble one of these plows out of the box. So hopefully this video helps a bunch of people out. You know, I always try to make videos, how to, DIY, because a lot of people don't know, and sometimes it's just great when you can watch a video before you do it, just to kind of get your bearings on what's going on and what you're going to be up against. So hopefully this video helps somebody out. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope to have another video out very soon, so make sure you guys stay tuned. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next one.